Hello everybody, welcome to another video. Today I'm finally going to review Oppenheimer. I've been looking forward to this movie for a long time, and I gotta say, it was in not a perfect movie, but was really good. To me, at least, I gotta say, this is so far the movie of the year. I mean, the acting in this movie is just superb. If none of these actors get any kind of doesn't get any kind of reward or something award, dude, I am going to scream because just like with Elvis, like the acting is so good in this movie, especially from I think it's Cillian Murphy. I think his name is pronounced like that. Who plays Oppenheimer, and there's a lot of good actors in this movie. What's his name now again? Robert Downey Jr. Jesus, I almost forgot his name. That man can act as well. I mean, I've seen him in so many movies, and he's always performed one of the best acting so far. I mean, I loved him in Tropic Thunder, for example. I liked him as Iron Man in some movie, but because I'm not a superhero movie, I just don't care about them. And I gotta say that in this movie, he's playing fantastically as well. I mean, sometimes at first you don't recognize him. Like, wow, is that Robert Downey Jr.? It's kind of like Tropic Thunder. Like, is that Robert Downey Jr.? Yeah, as I said, the acting in this movie is superb. I loved every moment of it, from the acting and that sort of thing. The special effects is also really good, and also the CGI from some of the scenes absolutely awesome, are really good as well. And I gotta say, and the music as well. If you know Christopher Nolan, you know that he likes to ruin his movies with this too loud music. Like in Interstellar is a example of that, with this so high music or violin music that you don't hear what people say. You almost like fades out. And I am gonna say, yes, I hated that about Interstellar. The music just ruined some part of the movie. But yeah, there are some in this movie as well. But it's kind of like he has toned down that sort of effect or music effect he usually do with his movie. And Christopher Nolan is a little bit of hit and miss when it comes to his movie. Sometimes they are really good, and sometimes they are just so not bad, but they're a miss. Like, they're not super bad, but they're not good. That's the thing. But this movie is a clear hit for him. I mean, this was a absolutely good movie. Do I have some problem with it? Absolutely, there's some, and I'm gonna go into it a little bit later. So the movie is around 3 hours long, and in a way, they didn't feel like 3 hours. Well, except for the kind of like the third act, but otherwise, it felt like 2 hours maybe. But other than that, it was on average good time for a movie for telling a story about Oppenheimer. As a history nerd in some way, I know a little bit about Oppenheimer. I knew about his past in the, not in the Communist Party, but the Communist movement, if you wanna call that, like socializing with communist sympathizers and socialists and union people who try to create a union in the United States back then. But even today, it's really hard to do that. In the first act, you pretty much follow him around from his, maybe in his 20s. Yeah, I would say somewhere around there. Gonna kind of like get to know him a little bit, like, and how he met his first girlfriend, if you want to call that, or lover, and tell him a little bit about his backstory and that sort of thing. Little bit, not too much. That's okay. And we also get this in the first act. There's a lot of weird. Here's one of the things I don't like about the movie. It's this movie where they take the scenes from 20 years ahead or 30 years ahead, small scenes and put them like in every third scene at the moment of the present. It's really, or in past if you want to call it that. To me, it doesn't work like that. I hate when movies do that. Like, I don't want to see. I know they're trying to connect. Like in Dunkirk, it's a good example for this movie. When you see a lot of the stories that's taking place in different times, that's all connecting eventually in the third act. It's kind of like the same in this movie. The first act has a lot of things. Well, throughout the movie, but mostly in the first act, there's a lot of scenes from the third act. That should belong in the third act, but it comes into the first act. Like, I don't like it. I like when the story is going on a linear path, like kind of like the first the bomb. I think the movie just called it Bomb or something, which also it's a little bit about Oppenheimer, which have a little bit more insight of the nuclear, the Manhattan project and that sort of thing. But it doesn't follow historical accuracy that much compared to this one. And this is based on the movie, not the movie, sorry, the book Oppenheimer, the Prometheus Oppenheimer, something like that. I think it was called. I read it some time ago, and I gotta say it's a good book and that sort of thing. How should I say it more? As I said, then the first act, it was good pace. I liked it, and I absolutely love the dialogue between a lot of people in this movie. I'm not gonna remember all these names because the Manhattan Project involved so many people and scientists from mostly Jewish background who fled either Italy and Germany in that time. And I'm not a good man when it comes to foreign name. So that is pretty much the first stage of the movie. It's, as I said, it follow Oppenheimer from his early recruitment of the Manhattan Project, a little bit about his background and his family and his how he met his lovers and that sort of thing, and what you call it now, and also his studies overseas and that sort of thing. A little bit of that, and eventually when. And also his communist and socialist socializing with those people with the same mindset back then. And the second stage is pretty much the entirety of the Manhattan Project, like how they recruit people, how they function, like organized to build a bomb and that sort of thing, who works on what, fusion and plutonium and testing and that sort of things. Like, I know a very little about the nuclear bombs and that sort of thing. I do know just that they are kind of the fusion is one of those weakest of the nuclear bomb, if I remember correctly, and the plutonium is much more powerful. Then you have thermonuclear. They only mention, but they don't really showcase any of it. A thermonuclear, so far that I know, is one of the most powerful nuclear weapons that exist today. And the final act in sort of way with stage 2 is obviously the Trinity test, which took place like in 16 July 1945, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think so. And of course, we gotta talk about the nuclear bomb. As the marketing team for this movie said, that they are exploding a real nuke. Like, I obviously didn't believe that because, you're gonna need some really big permission to do such a thing. I mean, if not Hollywood would find one of those missing nuclear bombs that Russia just somehow lost, like, yeah, then I wouldn't be more interesting. But yeah, you get to see the Trinity test, the initial explosion. But if you have studied explosion, I know a lot of military people who done military service and that sort of thing, and who works on bombs and that sort of thing, they would be a little bit disappointing. I mean, the Trinity test, even though it's a big bomb, but compared to those who come after, is nothing compared to them. So, and also there are videos on the Trinity test, which are extremely impressive and that sort of thing. And for those who know bombs and that sort of thing, the bomb is very impressive, but you can clearly see that this is not an explosion. Like, it's more like a fire effect, typical napalm explosion, like typical Hollywood movie explosion. A real nuke would have, well, it would look much different. Sure, it was an impressive effect, and I think they should have involved a little bit more CGI for the Trinity test if I was in charge of it, but it was impressive nonetheless. It was a really good scene, absolutely, like that into build up before they push the bottom, like that was really good. Like the music, the tension, and people who are showing their anxiety and their excitement and just awe, and I liked that. That was freaking cool. Um, the one thing I was a little bit disappointing a little then when the third stage begins after the Trinity test, and this is where it felt like after the Trinity test, it should like the movie should end because it feel like they've done it and that sort of thing. It's over, but it continue for an hour maybe, I think, and I don't know what to think. I mean, here's the thing: the third stage is mostly taking place. If I remember correctly, the Lewis versus Oppenheimer hearing, I think it was. Basically, the Lewis, I don't remember his name now again. He was the kind of like the head. What do you call it now? Oh yeah, I looked it up. I needed to because remember there's so many names in this movie. Even I, who read about the Manhattan Project and a little bit of Oppenheimer, there's so much name. Like there's, I mean, when you look at this movie, you're going to forget. I can promise you that. Even though who have extreme amount of knowledge, maybe they will be able to keep up. But the movie has so many characters and so many names. You are going to forget some of them, except for the most famous one like Oppenheimer and Einstein. And Lewis Strauss, who was the chairman of the what was it called again, Atomic Energy Commission, which Oppenheimer was kind of like a advisor to, I think it was. It mostly focused around that, and that Oppenheimer was the initial spy for the Soviet Union and the communists because of his communist past, or sympathizing communist past. Obviously, he wasn't that. There was a spy in the Manhattan Project, and he gave the source materials and that sort of thing to the Soviets later on, and which will lead to the Soviet building their own nuke, which they're talking about in the movie, which is cool and that sort of thing. And then we get to this talk about nuclear control and that sort of thing, and nuclear energy, and the possibility of destroying humanity and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of things in this movie that's just passing by quickly. That is one of kind of like the second thing I didn't like about this movie, is that especially in the first stage, I can understand it because there's so much happening and so many people that they need to go fast, and it's like, if I'm going to showcase like this: how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. How are you? Oh, I'm fine. How's the family? How's the job? Tell me about it. I'm really excited for it. Oh yeah, the family is good. Yeah, my job is really awesome. That's it. How's the weather? It's kind of like that. It's quick scenes in the beginning, really quick one. I mean, you don't really give a chance to like take it in, like mostly all of the visuals, mostly just the sounds and the dialogue. Not really so much about the visuals and the acting from the faces and for the actors and that sort of thing. A little bit disappointing there, but hey, it's so much, so they have to compromise it here, and it's understandable, but it's a little bit irritating. And honestly, they could have cut so much from the third stage and a little bit from the second stage, so they can have this more time with the dialogues and kind of like capture that, scientifically talks and that sort of thing. So another disappointment I have with the movie is that when they're finished with Trinity, they are sending the fat man and the little boy away for the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I was like, are we going to see the bombing? Because here's the thing: this movie is not so much like the threat of nuclear bombs. They are a little bit, but not enough in my opinion. the some scenes, but they are mostly quick sessions and not real. I mean, it's mostly when you see Oppenheimer's views after the Trinity test, like his vision of the future and the guilt he's having for seeing people crying when everybody else is cheering. It's impressive, yes, but there's one scene as well where like a month after the Hiroshima bombing, Oppenheimer and his science colleagues are sitting in a room watching pictures and probably movies from the bombing and the Hiroshima. You see them all watching these pictures and that sort of thing, and while someone is describing what they are seeing, and we don't get to see anything. Like, I feel like if you're gonna portray nuclear bombs and that sort of thing, you need to showcase. You need to show us what's happened. They show little bit, very little, how what nuclear bombs can do to a human in like microseconds in for scenes, but not enough. Like, I was like, why didn't we get to see the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing? Like, the effects of them, like the people afterward. I feel like they should be a little bit more brave here, and Christopher Nolan should have used his camera skills and that sort of thing. I really, man, I lost my words there. His skills to showcase in his artistic skills, I should say, his the effects of nuclear bombs, because there are even documentaries that do. Here's also, if you're Japanese, I understand this is a very controversial topic to talk about when it comes to the nuclear bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I understand that, but you need to understand this for the rest of humanity to understand what nuclear bombs and the effects of them and the consequences for using them. We need to be showcased the real needy and greedy things, like gore and all that sort of thing. We need to see it. We need to expose this sort of thing. What can happen to you? There's some movies with radioactive stuff and that sort of thing that has done it much better than this movie. Like, for example, the Chernobyl series, which was amazing as well, showcase radioactive sickness much better than what this movie is. This movie does. So I was like, why you not show us the initial bombing of Hiroshima, and then we see the effects. I mean, when you read, and I don't think there's many more survivors from the bombing, but when you hear and read what they have experienced during the bombs and even the affect, I mean, there are some what the alien worlds have they experienced, like the destruction and zombie people going around. I mean, people who with their skeletons exposed because their flesh has just either been blown away or melted, and their children without their eyes because their eyes has melted because of the heat, and people who doesn't have a skin anymore. And I mean, and the shadow people from the people who got just vaporized from the explosion, and the destruction, and then the cancer for a lot of people. Like, there's really gore stuff. I feel they must have, in my opinion, they must have been more brave with this sort of stuff, because there was, if people remember the Nuremberg movie with what was his name now again, Alec Bowman, which was also a really good history movie and that sort of thing. At least they are much more brave in sort of a showcasing, for example, movies from real movies, I should say, from the concentration camps, like mass graves and people being shot and corpses, like really gory, disgusting things, and they are real picture from the camps. If they can do it, why not do it with this movie? So, because people need to understand what nuclear bomb, because it feel like they talk a lot about the nuclear. We only see very little about the effects of nuclear bombs and that sort of thing. It didn't feel like that hit, like, oh my god, these sort of things are so destructive, and we know it, but no, like that. Because a lot of people just in my theater didn't feel like they cared about nuclear bombs or that sort of thing. They and this movie doesn't seem to be. They only talk about it and showcase like one nuclear bombs, but that's it. They only talk about it. And I understand, yeah, I understand. It's a Oppenheimer movie. It's going to focus on Oppenheimer, which is awesome, and that sort of thing. And I also feel like they could have involved a little bit more about the Manhattan Project, because there's a lot more from the Manhattan Project. So I think there's a lot of incidents that happened during the project and that sort of thing. But I gotta say, it was a really good movie. The acting is a 10 out of 10 in my opinion. Effects, I will say that both the probably CGI and the special effects still are impressive, so I'm gonna say it's a 8 out of 10. The music was actually pretty good. Like, there was a lot of good choices from musical hits here and there, and they were hitting in a real good pace and a real good time. So it's a 8 out of 10 as well. So I say this is so far the movie of the year, and a really good history movie. Well, romanticizing history, if some people want to call it like that. I'm still gonna call it a history movie. So yeah, I liked it. It was a 8 out of 10 in my opinion. There's some things that could have been better, but it was a good movie. For 3 hours, it was a really good movie. Then people ask me why didn't I see like Barbie or that sort of thing. I will be honest, I'm not one of those targeting audience. I don't care about Barbie. I didn't grow up playing with them, so yeah, I don't care. I would say the actors in that is actually pretty good as well, but so far what I heard about Barbie, it's not that good compared to Oppenheimer. So the question is, will this movie be toppled by Napoleon that's coming out in Thanksgiving? I think so, because honestly, like, if who are these people would you rather want to know about? Napoleon, the Emperor of France, the man who pretty much conquered all of Europe almost, and or the man who invented the atomic bombs. It's, to me, I would rather want to learn more about Napoleon than Oppenheimer, but hey, there was so far. I was gonna say my opinion. I would rather want to learn more about Napoleon than Oppenheimer, because I'm not a big. I mean, I love science and that sort of thing. So, and I'm a science. I love science and that's why I believe more in science than anything else. But yeah, I do think that Napoleon is eventually going to topple Oppenheimer as the movie of the year, because, as I said, Napoleon is so much more interesting to learn about his life and that sort of thing. Then we have Harry S. Truman in a sort of short scene, and he's played by, I think it was Gary Goldman or Oldman. I don't remember his name exactly. He did a good job. A little bit, I don't know what to say about his portrayal of Truman. It was a little bit. I mean, Truman is a really interesting character to read about. I think he's actually looked at one of the most, not the best president, but one of the most successful presidents of the United States of America's history. And as I said, he's a very interesting character to read about, because he didn't really want to be president, and then he didn't really want to be vice president from the beginning. He was just chosen to do so by others, so he felt like more like, people are depending on me, so I guess I will take the job. If no one really wants it, like no one, how about you? Can't you do it? And say, no, I'm voting for you. Oh, okay, I take the job. So kind of like that. And I think he was looked down and he was very unpopular in his first term and that sort of thing. But as time moves on, as I said, he's been looked with much more positively eyes. So I would say yes, Harry Truman is a very interesting character. And say what you want about his decision to to bomb Hiroshima and drop it and drop the bomb and that sort of thing. I'm gonna say that his cause for it was justified. Now sometimes you just need to do some unnecessary evil and that sort of thing. You just have to do it. Sometimes you need to showcase some sort of power to people, understand, like sit the hell down and listen. So yeah, I would say, even though his portrayal was a little bit awkward, but still a good one. So that is my opinion of Oppenheimer. It was a really good movie. There are some things that I think they could have been done much more better, and maybe cut it down here and there, and yeah, as I said, cut some things and just make it more better in some scenes. Other than that, it was a great movie. I think it's not the best movie from Christopher Nolan, but it's a really impressive one. So yeah, it's an 8 out of 10, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's going to be, so far as I said, it's the movie of the year. Question is, will it be toppled by Napoleon? I suspect so, because Napoleon looks like it has some really good actors in it, and it looks like to have like really good effects and that sort of thing. So I have high hopes for the Napoleon movie. So that is my review on Oppenheimer. It was a really good movie, 8 out of 10. I don't know what's coming next except for Napoleon, and yeah, I mean Starfield is coming out. I think it's just one more month, something like that, until it comes out, and I'm looking forward to it. And don't expect me to review that until like I'm finished, which is going to take a long time. So anyway, thank you all for watching. See you all later.